It's tetelestai. Is that what you're trying to figure out? Yeah, it means it is finished. It's a Koine Greek word. Oh, there. See, you learned something about Greek today.
Tetelestai.
Tetelestai?
Yes.
So kind of like
Yeah, tetelestai. It's Koine Greek.
Huh.
It was the common Greek dialect at the time.
Hello, everybody. My name is Todd. I've been here a couple of different times. I was here last Thursday. I was here once last fall. I came specifically last Thursday and again today because I know that last week there was an individual here on campus who was raising a little bit of a ruckus. It's kind of loud and obnoxious. I might be loud and obnoxious too, hopefully in a different way. The guy that was here last week was preaching some pretty hateful stuff, and I don't want to say that no true Christian would ever act that way, because genuine believers, genuine Christians can get wrapped up in sinful actions just as much as anybody else. What I do want to say is that what he was doing last week had nothing to do with the message of the gospel, and had nothing to do with the message that Christ would preach when he was on earth. What I mean to say is that while there are some things he might have been pointing out that were sinful, and Christ himself pointed out sin in society and in culture, Jesus, in his own words, said that he did not come to condemn the world, but the world was already condemned without him. So my hope is to not leave you in that place of condemnation. You know, the gentleman that was here last Tuesday flat out said, I didn't come to preach the gospel, I came to preach judgment, and that's not who I am. I don't have the authority, I don't have the power as a Christian to judge and condemn anyone. Even if I disagree with a person's lifestyle or their choices in life, it's not up to me to judge that. Only God is the judge. And as comforting as it is to hear only God is the judge, for a person who understands what that means, that's terrifying. And the reason that I say it's terrifying is because, yes, God is a judge, but he's a holy judge. He's a just judge. He is the perfect example of righteousness. Christ, second person of the Trinity, God the Son, is for us what perfect righteousness looks like. And while his life was a beautiful example for us, he didn't just live his life to be an example so that we could know how to live. Like, if you can pattern your life after Christ, in as much as you have the power to do that in yourself, by all means, pattern your life after Christ. It's never going to hurt anybody if you can go out and feed 5,000 people in one day. You're obviously not going to be able to do that the same way that he did, but you can certainly pattern yourself after that. But see, living your life the way Christ did, I get tongue-tied from time to time. Living your life the way Christ did isn't going to be what's going to save you. See, because everything in your life is marked by your sin. My life is marred by my sin. Your life is going to be marred and marked by your sin. And Christ, in living his life, didn't have the sin that we bear. As the God-man, as a perfect Son of God, perfect Son of David is what the Bible refers to him as, Jesus didn't have any sin of his own, and that's why he had to come. See, every intention of the heart, God says this in Genesis chapter 6, as he, Joy, right? It's nice to see you again. So, in Genesis chapter 6, when God's looking down on the earth, and he's about to judge the earth for the wickedness that is there, And he sees the heart. He doesn't just see the actions of men. He sees the heart of men. And he says something very profound, and this describes every human being that's ever lived. The only intention of the heart of every man was only evil, always. And that's us. So most of us think we're pretty decent people because most of us spend our time comparing ourselves to everyone around us. Like I just met Jeremy here, right? I get your name right? I just met Jeremy here. So Jeremy and I, complete strangers, never met before. Jeremy's like, why are you putting me on blast like this? We never met before, but it'd be very easy for us to compare our lives to each other, and then one of us to make the decision that I'm better than the other person because I've never done X. Maybe I've never gotten a speeding ticket, and we're going to say, well, because I've never gotten a speeding ticket, I'm better than you, or I'm better than the person next to you. Maybe it's something more serious. Most of us walking around here could probably say, I've never committed murder. And so, when we compare ourselves to one another, we're always going to look better than somebody. The other problem with that is that no matter how good we are, there's always going to be somebody better. My cross-country coach used to tell me that all the time. No matter how fast you are, don't look at me now, I don't run anymore. But no matter how fast you are, there's always going to be somebody out there that's faster. You're not trying to compare yourself to them, you're trying to beat them. And that's what we do as people. We're constantly comparing ourselves to other people. And what I want to do is I want to hold you up to the example of Christ. I want to hold you up to His life, and I want to show you that compared to Christ, you're not righteous. You're not a good person. You're just like me. You're not good. Nothing about you, left to your own devices, is good. Everything that you choose to do with your life, if you're apart from Jesus Christ, you're doing to please yourself or to look good in the eyes of the world. And if that's your motivation, you're going to have a problem with God on the day that you die. Because God's going to compare you to His Son. God the Father is going to compare you to God the Son. And He's going to say, compared to my Son, you are rotten and wicked and evil.
Dude.
Yeah.
These are college students. They don't want beliefs shoved up their ass. They
Okay. Why are you mad?
They're not.
Why are you angry?
Because you're being stupid. That's
Okay.
why.
That was an ad hominem attack. I might be stupid, doesn't make me wrong. So, have a good day, young lady. Turn to Christ and live. So, anyway, as I was saying, you compare yourself to Christ. That's what God's going to do. He's going to compare you to the perfect Son, to the second person of the Trinity. And you're going to find that you are in serious trouble because compared to Christ, you are utterly without hope. But see, Christ didn't come just to live an exemplary life. He had to come and be a sacrifice, and that was a perfect sacrifice. He had to live having survived life, resisting every single temptation that ever came his way. So if you put enough temptation in front of me for something, sooner or later I'm going to cave in. So I'm on this keto diet right now. It's like no carbs, right? Low sugar, low carbs. I love pizza, so giving up pizza has been really, really hard. But I guarantee you, if you set a good enough pizza in front of me long enough and tempt me, I am going to cave into it. Now, eating pizza is not a sin, but we just all cave into temptations, no matter what our standards are. Sooner or later, we're going to cave into temptation. See, Christ resisted temptation every single moment of his life. Scriptures say that he resisted sin, he resisted temptation to the point of the shedding of his own blood. And so he did that for 33 years, and at the end of his life, he suffered 3 rigged trials. So we think about injustice today. Christ experienced the worst injustice ever. He was a completely innocent man, completely innocent of any crime, completely innocent of any sin, having never broken any of man's laws, never broken any of God's laws. Christ was put on trial. He was found guilty with no evidence. And then when the Roman ruler at the time, Pontius Pilate, tried to even let him go, he's like, hey, this guy's innocent. I want to give you him instead of somebody else. And the crowd picked a known murderer and a thief over Christ. And then they said, crucify him and let his blood be on us. So Pontius Pilate, that's where we get our terms, washed his hands of the whole ordeal, sentenced Christ to death because only the Romans could sentence people to die on the cross. Sends Jesus off to be crucified, and while Christ is being tortured and beaten before he's being crucified, he eventually is hung up there on a hill, and he hears the crowds mock him, and then the Father begins to pour out his wrath on him. That's why Christ had to die. He had to die being perfect, being a perfect sacrifice, having no sin of his own. He took sin from us. God the Father took sin off of Christ, or off of us, and put it on Christ, and then takes the righteousness of Christ off of him and then gives it to those who would believe. That's 2 Corinthians 5, verse 21. And so Jesus suffered under the wrath of the Father when he didn't deserve it. He took what we deserve on the cross. What an unrepentant person experiences when they die is the wrath of God. And Christ took that wrath. And he was the only one that could bear it. He was the only one who could bear an eternity's worth of wrath in a few short hours on the cross. And he took our punishment for us, so that if we would turn away from our sin and turn to Christ for life, turn to Jesus in repentance, that means to have our minds changed about who we are and how good we are, and agree with God about that, about our wickedness and about our unworthiness. He promises us everlasting life if we would turn to Christ and live. That's the good news of the gospel, and that's what was missing last Tuesday with the gentleman that was here. He screamed at people, he hollered at people, he called a lot of the women names. He called a lot of the guys names, and he drew a big crowd around himself because he was an angry man who was bent on making himself look good. He was busy comparing himself to everyone else. And the problem was he was no better than the people he was trying to judge. He didn't know the gospel. He didn't care about the gospel. And the last thing that I can say about that is the message of Christ is a message of love that commands obedience. It commands you to turn away from your sin, to turn to the cross, to throw yourself at the foot of the cross, to throw yourself at the feet of Jesus Christ and cry out for forgiveness, because he promises you that he will forgive. There's nothing you can do to earn that forgiveness. There's nothing that you can do that's going to make you good enough to be forgiven. But he promises to forgive because he sacrificed himself. He laid down his life so that you may have everlasting life.